this episode of The Exchange, I speak to Dr. Francesco Mazzarella about the impact fast fashion is having on our planet and its people, and Izzy Manuel talks us through some brilliant alternatives to fast fashion. Izzy, thanks for coming on this episode to talk about sustainable fashion.
No worries, thank you for having me.
You're a student fashion blogger currently studying chemistry at Bath, I believe?
Yes, yeah.
How did you get into fashion?
I think it's just one of those things that I've always enjoyed. Since being a younger teenager, I've always wanted to be on trend, and I've always been a little bit different. So I've always wanted to dress well, and I just liked clothes, to be honest. And so, yeah, I decided to take the plunge into going into blogging actually during the end of my A-levels, just because I wanted a creative outlet and I was just doing such academic subjects. I decided I really needed, a change.
Why do you think that sustainable fashion is so important?
I think we as people don't realise the environmental impact we have on the planet, and we have this throwaway culture and we just don't really think about what we're doing on a daily basis. And I think in hobbies like shopping actually do have an impact on the environment, and I think it's something that people need to start thinking about, because we're sort of using the world's resources and we're not really replenishing that, and we're throwing away so much clothes which people around the world can hardly, there are people who don't even have access to clothes, so why are we throwing them away as well, when not only is it not fair to those people, it's not good for the environment. There are just so many different things that I think it's really important that people sort of just think about.
And fast fashion is incredibly alluring, especially at this time of year. How do you avoid the temptation as someone who clearly loves fashion a lot?
I think it's just about sort of really thinking if you actually need that piece, taking a moment to be a bit mindful about why you're shopping in the first place. And if you have had your eye on a certain piece for a long time, thinking, could I actually get this item in a more sustainable way? Are there other places that I can get it from? Do I need to be spending the money on something that I don't actually need? And I think it's also just thinking about, do I have an item in my wardrobe that is basically exactly the same? Because if you do, then what's the point in buying the same thing twice over? It seems pretty pointless. So, yeah.
Francesco, it's great to have you on this episode of The Exchange to discuss sustainable fashion.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're a research fellow for sustainable fashion at UAL. What do we mean when we discuss or talk about sustainable fashion?
Sustainable fashion is a movement and a process of fostering change to fashion products and the fashion system towards ecological integrity, social justice, cultural preservation, and economic prosperity. So sustainable fashion is more than just addressing issues of production of textiles and fashion products. It also comprises addressing issues of the whole system of fashion.
And what do you think some of the negative impacts of the fashion industry are on the planet and also the people that live on it?
Fashion is one of the most polluting industries, second only to oil. The levels of CO2 in the atmosphere are already exceeding what is considered safe, and yet the fashion industry's emissions are predicted to increase by more than 60% in the next 12 years. Also, the fashion industry is one of the largest users of chemicals, and it can take up to 8,000 synthetic chemicals to turn raw materials into finished textiles. But also the use phase of clothes made of synthetic textiles has negative impacts on the ocean. In fact, when we wash our clothes, an average of 700,000 fibers is released, and 500,000 tons of microfibers end up in oceans every year. And the average British and European person in 2016 bought 60% more items of clothing that they did 15 years before, and they keep them for only half as long. In the UK alone, 2 million tons of clothing and textiles are thrown away every year. The vast majority of clothing ends up in landfills or is incinerated, and only 16% of the waste is collected for reuse or recycling. Another issue is also concerned with the workers of the fashion industry. with. So over 50% of the workers are paid the minimum wage. And even then, the minimum wages are generally half of what can be considered a living wage in most producing countries.
So much of what we are buying gets put into landfill almost immediately. I guess this is what we call fast fashion, this sort of the pace that it's moving at. A lot of criticism has been leveled at fast fashion. What is fast fashion? Why does it present a problem for sustainability goals?
Fast fashion means mass production of low quality, cheap garments that are disposed of at fast pace due to planned obsolescence. It presents a big challenge for achieving sustainability goals. In fact, it is grounded on overproduction, which also leads to excess stock. And often this stock is incinerated or shipped to countries in the global south, and then it erodes local economies and traditional craft skills. Also, fast fashion is encouraging overconsumption, and this results in the emergence of what we can define as a fast landfill.
I read a blog post of yours quite recently about where you discuss the ethics of jeans and how they're made. Why is it important, do you think, that we understand fully the environmental impact of our clothes?
I think because it's not really shared with us. We have no idea how products are made. We have no idea of the raw materials that go in. And I think from that blog post, if I'm correct, it takes 10,000 litres of water for one pair of denim jeans to be made, just based on the amount that's needed to grow the cotton, to wash them, to clean them, to prep them. And 10,000 litres is a lot of water. And you know, if you really want to get a pair of mum jeans, I don't think you need to buy them brand new.
During the process of learning more about sustainable fashion, is there anything that surprised you?
I think there's a whole thing about ethical fashion that people don't really realise. Like sustainable fashion, we immediately think of the environment, but we also should be thinking about the people who make our clothes. And especially earlier this year when COVID hit and there was that massive backlash because so many different fast fashion shops, including like Pretty Little Thing, I think even M&S, Topshop, H&M, they weren't paying their factory workers in Bangladesh for the orders that they had made. And like, you just can't even imagine there's literally people who are working in sweatshops over 12 hours a day, making clothes and not even being paid. And obviously there was also that scandal of Pretty Little Thing paying, I think it was £4 an hour for their factory workers in Leicester. And you just have to think, I don't want to be supporting a shop that literally that doesn't even allow someone to earn enough to survive like per week. And I think that's something that, you know, sustainable fashion does also need to, like, we need to share that more, and people need to understand that there is more to sustainable fashion than just the planet. It's also about the people who make the stuff as well. You
have a significant following on social media. How do you connect with your followers on this particular issue?
I think it's all about sort of sharing your own experience. So in my case, I share how I went into sustainable fashion basically because I couldn't afford fast fashion anymore, being a student. And so I decided to find alternative ways, and one of them was secondhand shopping, and sharing my experience of how I realised, you know, the impact of fast fashion and what the impacts are. And I think, you know, sharing things on stories and just sharing with your followers easier ways and ways in which they can tap into sustainable fashion and still enjoy the hobby of clothes.
Fashion is often how we express ourselves, and for most people, cost will be a really major factor in determining what we buy. Why is it important that we don't create a culture of blame around people's buying choices?
Yes, it's certainly environmentally friendly fibers have higher costs than traditional sources. And also producing garments in a truly sustainable way without compromising the environment. For many people, cost is a major factor in determining what to buy, and yet we should not blame anyone for their purchase decisions. However, I think we should instead trigger a mindset shift and encourage people to buy less but better, so that they can keep their clothes for longer. Another approach could also be to buy secondhand, which can be quite affordable. And we are also witnessing facing an increase of platforms for renting, swapping designers' clothes to optimize the use life of garments. But most importantly as well, I think we should encourage practices of care so that people can learn how to mend and repair their clothes instead of throwing them away when they are damaged.
And a lot of brands are actually responding to this by making more sustainable clothing. What are some of the ways that they're doing this?
So given all the negative impacts that fashion has on the environment and society, an increasing number of designers and brands are designing products with nature in mind and also implementing a number of sustainability strategies. For instance, Patagonia for the Black Friday in 2011 launched the campaign Don't Buy This Jacket, which was conceived to educate consumers about the issue of consumerism. And also the brand is promoting instead high quality, long lasting clothes and repair services. Timberland has also announced recently in September 2020 that they will source 100% of their natural materials, including leather, rubber, cotton and wool, from regenerative agriculture by 2030.
As a student, what have you learned about buying ethically on a budget?
I think it's all about picking the pieces, and sort of, if you don't need to buy 5 different jumpers in 1 year, why not just buy one that costs the same as the 5 jumpers together but is well made sustainably, made ethically, and you know that the people who are making it are paid a fair wage. And the other way to do it is to sort of, as I said before, buy secondhand, because I think there's a whole stigma against sort of like new means better, when actually I don't necessarily believe that new means better quality, because you might be able to get something that's much better made to like a really high quality that's actually cheaper just because it's secondhand. And I think, using sites like Depop, eBay, Vinted, even Facebook Marketplace, actually, you can find some really, really good stuff that is a lot cheaper. And I think for a student, that's really important. And even there's a lot of like swap shops as well, and people swapping clothes. And I think that's a really great way to sort of learn and understand sustainable fashion and understand the whole idea of circular fashion without having to spend huge amounts of money.
What small changes can we make to our buying habits to be that little bit greener, do you think?
I think just taking literally 5 minutes, like if you're doing an online shop, just taking 5 minutes to think, right, is it necessary? Like, do I really need to buy that? And just being, as I said before, mindful about how we're shopping. And I think, just because you're a sustainable person or you want to be sustainable, it doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you're going to buy sustainable fashion all the time, because, it's hard to do it all the time. But I think it's just the way to do it, and the way to get that is just to take an extra 5 minutes every time you go into a shop to think, do I actually need that? Are there alternatives that I could buy that are a lot better for the environment?
And can I just ask you to talk me through your outfit, because I really like it. Is it sustainable?
Yeah, it is. It's actually a hand crocheted jumper.
Wow. Did you crochet?
I wish. I'm learning to knit, so one day I'll be able to knit myself a jumper. But I actually found a seller on Depop who makes them herself, and I asked her to crochet like the strawberries as well, so it's just got like strawberries
Wow
all on the sleeves as well. So that's all made to order, which I think is definitely the way to go when it comes to fashion as well.
As consumers, we're often unaware of where our clothes come from. How can we become better informed about this?
Yeah, exactly spot on this. Fashion Revolution is a non-for-profit organization which was founded in 2013 to commemorate the anniversary of the Rana Plaza disaster, which was the collapse of a garment factory in Bangladesh. And since then, Fashion Revolution has grown as a global movement and also a campaign raising people's awareness of who made our clothes. And over the years, they've developed lots of resources, publications, and tools and events to educate the public around issues of transparency in the supply chain. And I really recommend everybody to look up for it.
Francesco, thank you very much for discussing this and talking to us about sustainable fashion. It's really, really interesting. And more than that, hopefully it's just going to help shift some of these practices. So thank you so much.